1940, we thought it was centuries ago.
Yeah, well, that was only 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, imagine 50 years
Yeah,
ago.
that's what
you
I
know,
said.
it's beyond, apprehension.
But they said because it's been getting good coverage that even the young people are amazed.
Oh, yeah.
But Benny, I don't think we were as appreciative until Desert Storm hit, and then it made you realize what must have gone on. You know what I mean? And that was nothing.
But when you think of Desert Storm, it was an isolated area. Here, we had the Japanese to fight, we had the Italians and the Germans. So that our men were just spread out.
Well, not only that, but before this was Africa. You know, I mean, where they were fighting Rommel.
They had to fight in Africa.
Till El Alamein.
Yeah.
I mean, to think that Hitler had such grandiose ideas, he really felt he could conquer the world.
He almost did.
What a maniac!
Yeah. Thank God he did.
Yeah.
What?
Thank God he did think he could. That's what defeated him. He way overstretched his capability.
Why the Germans didn't get rid of him, I don't comprehend.
Well, they tried. But
yeah, they tried.
The sensible ones tried to, yeah.
But what fanaticism, when you see them all in that huge stadium with all of their good stuff, you just can't
Millions
believe
of them, you know, all
that people can follow someone like that. I don't comprehend that.
Sounds like a cult.
Yeah,
it's a cult.
I mean, there's still people over there that deny.
It's Saddam Hussein.
Deny ever happened. Yeah.
That's how people are today with Rush.
Yeah. Who?
Rush.
Which one, though?
Yeah.
Thank you, girl.
I got a kick out of watching some of the old film from that. As the Americans were getting off the boats in England, you know, coming ashore, they had laid down like a poster of Hitler, and they're all walking on him as they're getting off the boat. Everybody stomped on his picture. As the Allied troops were coming from America.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
Yeah, as they got off the boat, somebody had laid a picture of Hitler there, and they were all walking on it as they got off the boat. And
Those Germans did the same thing with Winston Churchill on the toilets. They had a picture of Winston Churchill at WC. See, in England, it means water closet, which means the toilet.
Right.
So they had Winston Churchill, WC.
Well, someone turn off my fan, Joe.
Well, I just happened to be at the...
Well, you didn't have to buy a gift, only if you're a considerate person.
Only if you loved your father.
Yeah, only if you really loved your father. Or if you had
Run down to the shop go down on the corner road. No, I just happened to be at the bookstore yesterday.
Look at that. I didn't even know they had
I didn't even know they had one.
Let me show you, there's an excellent map in here, which shows the invasion path, and right here.
Oh, yeah.
It details everything about who landed where and what divisions they were. And
Yeah, here's right where I landed, right there. Eastbound. We had to go out the canal. This canal went all the way to Canada.
Oh, sorry you have to
But see, it shows who was what everything. I was looking at it last night.
Yeah, so you remember before Commando, that's where I was.
You know what they say, Tim?
Heather, if you want, do you want me to take down another
After
down?
this much either.
Okay.
Because the Germans were right over this canal. They fired at us every day.
I can't believe we did
Well,
it.
it says held by Allies at $2,400 on D-Day. You got a baby in the thing. Well, you guys probably knew because you were there.
Gardner,
I was right here on the other side of the
sign it
canal.
from us. Heather wrote something in the front of the book, so sign our names on it.
Yeah,
Well, goodbye, Beth, and thank you.
Fine, no problem. I'll see you guys later. I'll call you as soon as I find out.
Thanks for all the work you do.
Okay, yep, you guys are interested Sunday.
Hey, what about, which pie do you
But
want?
it details
Oh, that's right, pie.
German,
There's lemon, and there's strawberry, and then there's
major German
rhubarb
gun
strawberry.
batteries.
I'll go get some strawberries.
We used to it was a holiday spot.
Bye, Dad. We'll see you guys.
Anyhow, I saw this map. I thought that's beautiful.
Eat it on the way. No, I'll eat it tonight about 11. I'll be there.
Like everybody
Oh, this is yours.
It's the same thing.
Right, right.
I'll find it.
Do I get to sign it too? Okay.
I'm not going to get through the hair.
Oh, running. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead and start.
I don't. I mean, I'm not gonna, you know. All I was gonna say was that the war started when I was I was 14 years old when I started, 1939, and then let's see, when I was 17.
Talk louder, Dad.
You gotta talk louder.
Talk louder.
God, I can't talk any louder than I'm talking now. when I was 17, I volunteered, and no, I volunteered before I was 17, but it wouldn't take me until after my 17th birthday, and I went in.
Why didn't you lie?
You couldn't, because they had ways of checking, you know. Not looking up. And July of 42. But prior to that, though, we went through all of the bombardment, all the blitzkriegs. And,
England went into the war what year?
1939, September 3rd, 1939. And prior to my going into the service, we had to do all the blitzkriegs, the bombings, you know. And I remember we used to hide under the table when the bombs were coming down. They ran incendiary bombs. They were like a long stick, and when they hit the ground, it was phosphorus that would blaze into fire, you know.
Were those the bombs that chased you down the street?
No. Those were real ones. That's something else again.
Yeah, that occurred after D-Day.
That was after D-Day.
Right.
But,
that was the V1 and the V2 rockets.
Before I went into the service, there were bombs dropped on either end of my block. I'm talking about like a block this long, and the Germans, they were dropping in strings. So they hit the armory, and then the end of my street, and then the other end of my street. And I remember they hit the pub on the end of the street, and a great big gaping hole, and there was a guy sitting in a chair hanging over the hole, you know, and we pulled bodies out and everything else.
And it did something to your theater.
Yeah, it blew the theater up. Oh yeah, there was a film playing at the Gormont Theater, and you know the theater was bombed, and the only thing that was left on the theater was the sign. And you know what the sign was?
What?
Gone with the Wind. Everybody made a joke about it because it was in Manchester. Anyway, all of my brothers were evacuated into the country.
Why?
To get away from the bombing. And remember June, you know, Rose's wife,
right.
She was here, and she was evacuated, and it was the first time that she'd ever had a room all to herself. She had a mirror, a comb and everything, and bathroom all to herself.
In other words, she was thrilled to be evacuated.
She was thrilled to be evacuated because something she'd never had before. And then guess what? Her father came and took her back. And so she was just devastated. But anyway, all the kids were evacuated except myself because I was too old.
Well, how did they know what children to give to whom?
They just, people volunteered. They took them into the country, and then as the kids got off the bus, then they'd say, I can take 2, or I can take 3, or I can take 1, you know. And Auntie Faye, she took Roland and Donald. And then Bill, who was older, he went to live with the relatives of Faye's.
Did you ever get to see them again?
Yeah, I cycled 65 miles to go and see them before I went to the service. And they couldn't believe that I'd cycled all that way to see them, you know. But anyway, before I went to the service, they had a home guard. And you could join it after you were 14 years old. And the home guard was to, if the Germans dropped parachutists, you know, I mean, you were supposed to shoot them down and so on. We practiced with broomsticks for rifles, if you can believe it. We shouldered the broomsticks just like they were rifles and everything. Let's see, what else was I going to tell you? I was talking about the bombs, and the shrapnel would fall down. You could hear the shrapnel tinkling in the streets. Not necessarily from the bombs, but from the attack fire when we shot the Germans, you know. And you could see the searchlights would get onto a plane, and they would follow the plane, and you could see the tracer bullets, you know, going up to try and shoot them down and everything else. See what I'm
So you joined the Royal Marines?
I joined the Royal Marines in July of 1942.
And you were how old?
I was 17 years old. Let's see, 42, yeah, I was 17, right? And
you joined as soon as you were able?
Yeah, as soon as I was able. I volunteered before I was able, but it wouldn't take me until I was 17.
So you were looking forward to it?
Yeah, they said we'd take you on your 17th birthday. But because I was still considered underage, because you weren't considered a Marine until you were 18 years old. So when D-Day happened, when we started training for D-Day, they wanted to exclude me because I was still underage, you see. 18 was the official age, but they would still take you as a boy Marine at 17. So I said, well, look, the invasion isn't going to start until I'm 18 years old. I know that for sure. So they let me stay in the training. So we trained, and we had little boats, and oh gosh, not much longer than 12 feet, with little outboard motors on them. And our job was to go into the beaches and collect sand to sample the sand and everything.
So how long before D-Day did they actually start planning that there was going to be an invasion?
Well, we knew it for a year or more ahead of time. We were training before that, you know.
Right.
And,
they knew that somebody had to invade France.
3 million men trained in England for the invasion. 3 million.
In fact, on all of this south of England, there were tanks and trucks and guns lining every road, and the joke was there were so many tanks and trucks on that end of England that it was going to topple over.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, every road, you'd see them for miles and miles, all the guns, and everybody knew that there was, they called it the second front. They knew it was going to be a second front, and we knew, well, at least a year ahead.
The Germans knew it was
happen.
coming, they just didn't know
Oh, sure,
where.
they didn't know where. And
That's
then,
why
of
they
course,
built a wall around.
yeah. And of course, England sent so many false signals to the Germans
Right.
that they had no idea. They one time thought it was going to be Norway, another time thought it was going to be at the part of Calais, which was right across the channel.
It's only like 18 miles.
And then where we actually landed, Normandy, which was 90 miles across from Portsmouth. And but they had no idea. And even when they did land, they didn't think it was a true invasion, you know. They still think it was going to come into Calais. And Rommel, the German general at the time, was he had gone to visit his wife for her birthday. And he never came back because he thought, well, it's not a true invasion. He didn't believe it was. So consequently, all these troops that he had amassed near the part of Calais, he never sent them down. If he had sent all these Germans down, they probably could have repelled us.
Well, they thought Normandy was strictly a diversionary.
Oh, yeah, right.
And the true invasion would always be in...
Hitler wouldn't release them anyway.
No,
He
the
didn't
Panzer
believe it.
units.
Yeah, well, he didn't believe his own generals.
Yeah.
See? And the thing was, when we left Portsmouth, there were so many craft, you couldn't believe it, as far as the eye could see. And do you know what I left on? You wouldn't believe it. On a paddle steamer with side paddles that sailed on the River Thames. And we went across, and all these boats went across, every type of vessel you could imagine. And then, of course, we transferred then to landing craft, you know, what we call the LCPs, landing craft personnel. And then that's what we had the beaches with.
Where did you do the transfer?
It was, I don't know, 5 miles off the shore, whatever it was, you know, yeah. And,
so you were just barely 19 when D-Day came.
No, I don't think it was, unless he knew it.
Yeah, you would have been 19.
Just 19.
Whatever it was anyway, you know.
50 years.
Yeah, and...
So were you seasick by the time you hit the beach?
Oh, I never got seasick, but there were a lot of men that were. But any time I went aboard, I never got seasick. It never bothered me. And I traveled across some of the roughest crossings in the world. One crossing I used to make all the time was from through the Penland Firth, from the very northern tip of Scotland to the Orkney Islands. And even guys that had been in the Navy for 20 years would get sick, and I never did. It never bothered me. A lot of the guys were so sick they could barely climb off the boat, you know. But anyway, we transferred to these what they call landing craft personnel, and then we hit the beaches with those, you know. And let's see what else we want.
But as far as on June 6th, well, they actually left the night of June 5th, correct?
We were on board on June 5th. We were supposed to go on June the 5th. And it was so stormy.
They left you on board.
Yeah, we were on board.
Right.
And that's why a lot of the guys got seasick, because the boats were in the harbor going up and down.
So how long did it take to go 90 miles, Phil,
Oh,
do
that
you
wasn't...
think, when you look back on it?
The first wave arrived like at 6:30 in the morning, right?
Yeah.
Where were you in
I
that?
was in the second wave.
What time did you arrive in the...
I forget.
I thought the
forget.
first
It was
wave
second
arrived
The
before dawn.
first wave was right about dawn. It would
Yeah.
probably be about 6 or 6:30 or something like that.
So about what time did you get
But
there?
anyway, I don't know, probably 10 or something like that, maybe before that.
But the
point was,
parachute men jumped at midnight.
oh yeah,
Right.
they landed during the night, yeah, because they landed behind the Germans, you see. And
Lighters.
yeah, and the thing was, when we landed, there was so much devastation on that beach. There were tanks that were bombed out. There were ships that were sunk. There were bodies lying all over the damn place. There were trucks that were blasted, you know. And I looked at it and I thought, my God, we're never going to make it, you know. It was just devastation. It was for miles, you know, all along the beach as far as you could see. And the Germans had these what's called Stuka bombers. And these bombers would come right down like this, and they'd go, and they'd scream as they were coming down. That's the way the wings were designed. And when they pulled out, then the sound stopped. And as soon as you hear the sound stop, then you knew that's when the bombs were coming. And in the landing craft that I was in, there was a bomb dropped on either side of us. 2 bombs on either side of us, and it lifted the boat up in the water. And it was that bad, you know. The devastation, you couldn't believe it. Anyway, I landed at Weestrum, which is on the very right there on Sword Beach. And Weestrum was a holiday spa. But of course, it was devastated when we got there. All the houses were bombed and everything, you know. And there was a little bridge that we guarded. My job was to guard the Cairn Canal. And it was a main route to Paris from Caen, and they didn't capture